Well, hello, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be pulling the flywheel, pressure plate, and clutch off of that old engine block, and then we're going to be slapping that over there into the new one. And then we're going to solder the new engine in. So if that's something you're interested in seeing, stick around because it's coming up. All right, so you saw the last video getting the old engine out, stripping down the front end and all that good stuff. We're going to be pulling out the flywheel, the whole assembly. We're going to be replacing it right here on this other engine that we're going to be swapping in here. And I had intentions to kind of do a little more work to that engine, flip it over and pull the pan off, look at the bearings and what have you. But at this point in time, I know it runs, it's got good oil pressure. I just don't feel like I'm going to go through that process right now. It's extra money and time involved here. And I'd like to get the rest of this tractor checked out. It wasn't running, of course, when I bought it, so I don't know anything about hydraulics, transmission, any of that. So I'd like to know what that's all about. In order to do that, we've got to get the power plant back in it. So with that said, I'm going to pull this clutch apart. We'll check that out, and hopefully it's in good shape. If it's not, then we'll have to figure out next steps there, but that's going to be the first one. Let's flop over to our time-lapse camera, and then we'll get rolling here on getting this clutch and flywheel off of the old block. All right, so you watched there in the time lapse, went ahead and got the pressure plate, clutch, and the flywheel off of that old engine. Flywheel looks to be in pretty good shape. I don't see any issues with that whatsoever outside of the pilot bearing right there in the middle. I'm going to get a new pilot bearing for this, and that's going to slow me down just a little bit as far as making the video, but that's all right. The next step, I guess, too, is to order a clutch. And this clutch here is just real close to those rivets. And I hate to be at this stage of it. I'm going to have to wait on a pilot bearing anyway. I really need a throwout bearing at the same time. So I might as well go ahead and get another clutch. So that's my plan. I'm going to have to place a parts order here and get clutch, pilot, throwout bearing, and might be a few other small little odds and ends things that I need to get. But besides that, that's going to kind of stop the progress here on the clutch. I will, however, continue working on that block, because now that the flywheel and everything's out of the way, that opens me up to put it on the engine stand. So we can do that, get it flipped over, and look at the low side and see what we've got going on. So that's what I'm going to do next. Just go ahead and strip this down. We'll get our parts ordered, and then towards the tail end of this video, we'll put that clutch in on that new engine replacement. All right, so you saw there on time-lapse camera, got the engine stand set up here on the motor, got it flipped over, and if you recall, when we first dropped the pan out from underneath this thing, we had a big chunk of steel in there, and found out what it was. It's actually right here. That center main bearing cap, busted off. And then upon further inspection, if you look at the rear one, it's cracked. And then, or the front one, and then the rear one is also split pretty severely. So, not quite sure what happened here, but I mean, it did a number on it right there. That center main is busted. So, don't know if water did that, if there was something else that happened, but I'm going to find out here shortly. I don't see anything else in there that's obvious at the moment. But next step here is I'm going to go ahead and pull the oil pump out get it out of the way, then we'll pull the main bearing caps off, chuck those dudes in the trash, then we'll go ahead and pull the 4 rods off, and then curious to see what the crank looks like. It might be broken in half somewhere, I don't know. But we will find out here in just a minute. So I'm gonna flip back over that time-lapse camera and we'll continue tearing down this engine. All right, so you saw there on the time lapse, I went ahead and broke loose the front and the rear main cap bolts, as well as each of the rods, and got to looking at this center one. Of course, we're broke there, and there's a nice large gap there. So when you look at this, it actually has bent. Let me zoom in here. It's bent that bolt. That bolt right here is out this way a fair amount. That whole thing shifted, so I'm not quite sure how that happened. It had to have happened, I think, while that engine was running. I don't think it was something that, you know, like originally when I bought this thing, I was told that it just sat there and it got water in it and locked up. I'm not so sure on that. I think that there was a catastrophic engine failure here that caused it. I just don't think that broke, and even if it was seized and they tried to pull start it or something like that, I just don't think there would have been enough torque on that for it to do that. And if I recall, I had a couple of bent push rods that came out of this thing too. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pull off this rear main here and just take a look at him. So it just broke her clean off. Broke it. Don't see anything that shows her stress. Looks like the seal was in there pretty decent. Yeah, that thing is just, she just broke off. All right. Interesting. All right, so we got that. This is garbage. Get rid of this front seal. Let's look at this front bearing. The bearing looks pretty dang new. I mean, there's a lot of life left in that thing. Interesting. Okay. From what I can see here, the crank itself appears to be fine. And let's see, were these standard or had this been turned? So I'm looking there, not seeing anything on that one. Maybe it's up here. Cleveite. I'm not seeing anywhere on here that she says whether that's standard or not. All right, I'm gonna set that off the side. I'm not gonna put that in the trash quite yet until I figure out what I got. All right, let's do the front same way here. Same situation here. Just broke right off. Let's look at this bearing. On the outside of having had some water on it, I don't really see anything that shows it was wearing. The crank would need to be polished for sure. Looks fine there. Well, that leads me to the center, and I don't know if I'll be able to get that bolt out of there. We'll put this new DeWalt impact down on him and see what she goes. A lot of torque. rub clean off. Let's see what this does. Alright, so I was able to get her loose. Let's see. So it looks like, so that come out. That bolt is not at all bent, but it was sideways in there. All right, there's our bearing, and it's our thrust bearing right here in the center. Outside of having had water in it, I don't see anything really obvious with that. Yeah, I'm just curious if that thing had been, if that block had been repaired or something, but I mean, this little chunk come out of here. It looks like that was off of, I thought maybe it was right out of the block right here, but it's not. I don't know. That is interesting. It certainly looked to me like that it was sideways in there. All right, so let's get down into the rods here and see what we've got. Now on this center rod right here, so let's see here, what cylinder is that? It's either 2 or 3. I think it starts 1 in the back, 1, 2, 3, 4. If that is correct. This one's got a little scoring right there in the bearing itself. And the crank's got a little spot on him right here too, nothing major. All right, so I want to keep these marked. They are, it has been turned because I've got some machining marks on here to match up the rod caps and the rod. So it's marked 3. So this should be 1, 2, 3. No, this has 4, so there's nothing. That doesn't mean anything at all. It's just marking where they were. Okay, so that goes there. Let's look down in here on this one. Bearing looks fine. Let me slide the camera over here. I apologize for that. I should have been paying attention. Let's get that down in there. Yeah. So there's that little, you can see that. I can barely feel that with my fingernail. So I don't know if I can polish that and we're good or not. Now this one down here is good to go. I don't feel a thing with that. All right, let's look at our other one here. Nothing wrong with that bearing. Crank looks fine. That front one I can't get, so I'll have to tap. Tap here on the cap bolt. Everything looks fine with that one as well. Crank looks good. Interesting. Okay, so at this point I should be able to lift the crank out of there. More than likely gonna have to get something to pry up underneath it because it's been in that position for a while. This one actually went right there. All right, so let me grab my pry bar. See if I can get him loosened up here. This is a smaller one. What I'm used to using. Let's see, where's a good spot. I don't know if this will do me any good or not. Might have to get the big one out here. Now let me get my larger one here and we'll click back on here once I get it broke free. All right, so I got it broke free. Just gonna lift him out of here and try not to pinch my fingers. I ought to be using my lift on this. All right. There's the crank, and she's not broken too. The other bearings look okay as well. Let me go ahead and just get this set off to the side here. Where I can get it out of the way. All right. So everything else looks pretty good down in here. I mean, I don't see anything major with the bearings. Maybe it did freeze and break. I don't know. It just didn't look like that. Maybe it froze and broke and then they tried to start it and that took care of the push rods, and you can see that one connecting rod right here. It is bent right there. This one is straight, that one's got a little bend to him. So yeah, I don't know. Well, I do need to get in here and drive down each of my lifters that are up so that cam will come out of there, because with those lifters, you know, pushing up against the lobe there on the cam, it will not come out. So that's going to be my next task for right now. I'm not going to try to get these pistons and rods and everything out as a unit. They are toast. I'm just going to drive the sleeve out from down this way, and that'll give me a bare block, and then I can check everything else for structural damage. Don't see anything, so that's good. Hopefully the block is reusable. So anyway, that's gonna be my next step. I'm gonna flip over to time lapse on that because there's really not much to capture, and this video is starting to get a hair bit long. So let me flip over to that, and then we'll go ahead and get the lifters pushed down. We'll get this cam pulled out. All right, so you've been watching there on the time lapse while I drive out all of our pistons. Actually, I did the sleeve and piston together because they were seized. But I want to just jump in here real quickly and explain how I'm doing that. There's a couple of different ways to do it. You can buy a puller. If your pistons are out, it's real easy to come from the top side there, reach down in and pull the liner. But in my case, that would not have worked for me because everything was locked up in the sleeve, as you can see here. So what I found a good method to do is I got this piece of 3/4 just flat stock steel, and I'm able to lay that down in there right across where the sleeve is protruding through the bottom side, and then with a pretty good sized sledgehammer just knock it away. So That'll allow you to get it driven down through. Now, if you're doing a 6-cylinder, you know, you're going to be sticking out a little bit further. What I recommend doing is getting a block to stick underneath the end of your cylinder block down to the floor, and that way it prevents, if you're hitting too hard, breaking off any of your connections back here, or accidentally having that block come down and get you. So one recommendation there. But anyway, once you drive them through, it'll pop out just like that, and the only thing holding it in place is the O-ring. It's just kind of caught right there, as you can see, and all you got to do is just pull it and she'll come right out of there. So what I've seen so far, there's nothing cracked in here in between the two. Looks like, what's that right there? Yeah, it looked like that might have been a crack, but it's not. It's just in the casting. Same way here, it's just the way the casting is. So that block is reusable. I could take that to a machine shop, probably, well, I will have to get some new caps there, and then you can have that line board just to make sure that the caps are good, and deck the head surface right there, and man, she'd be ready to go. Bearings inside for the cam looked good as well. Didn't see any issues with that. Cam came out. Cam lobes look great. I was looking at those. There ain't a thing wrong with those. Those are in really good shape. So cam just needs cleaned up just a little bit. Should be good to go. Now on the crank, as I mentioned, it could be bent, but as far as turning it, I just don't think it would need to be turned. I think it can be polished and we'd be good to go. So I might at some point take that to a machine shop and let them check it out and see what it looks like. And if it's bent, then it's scrap. If it's not, then it'll be available. I'm not going to keep it. I'll probably sell it. Just depends. So anyway, yeah, that's it for now. This video ran a little bit longer than expected. I know that in the beginning here we were talking about the clutch, pressure plate, and the flywheel, getting it swapped over to the other engine that's sitting here behind the D17. But I had to order some parts. Found out that the pilot and throwout bearing were not in the best of shape, and the clutch was toast. So I'm going to stop this video here, and then I will start the next video, which will get into that clutch and putting all that assembly together, because I think I can do that in just one video alone with what we've got going on and what's entailed in it. I'd like to have as much detail as possible. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for right now, guys. Thanks for watching. Hit like, subscribe, share this video, and I got lots more coming up here on this D17 project. Have a good day.